I got my Scooby Natural shirt. Any Supernatural fans out there? I certainly hope so. Hey guys, Cassie here. Welcome back to my channel. And today I'm going to be doing my formal review. We use the word formal very loosely around here. Of Jenny Han's novel, To All the Boys I've Loved Before. I was hoping to get to watch the Netflix movie of this book before I did the review because I kind of wanted to compare them, but I didn't end up having the time. So maybe if I watch it and I have enough extra thoughts, I might post another video about that, but maybe not. We'll see. But basically, if you watched my August wrap-up, you will know that I had very mixed feelings about this book, and they were mostly negative. So right off the bat, I really did not like this book, and I honestly could not understand at all what the hype is and why so many people like it and recommend it. I think the first few chapters of this book are pretty classic examples of like what not to do, really, especially in regards to showing versus telling. I feel like Jenny Han, and I hate to like just lay it in here, like I don't like doing negative reviews, but whatever. I feel like she feels the need to tell everything, and that's just not my personal preference of writing style. I like to kind of figure things out on my own. I like when the author shows you something enough that you feel like you figured it out by yourself, even though they're obviously the ones telling it to you, but just in a sneaky way, sort of. And there's just nothing sneaky about her writing at all. She just lays it all out there. So I don't usually do book reviews at all, and I'm not really a fan of doing them, but I had so many thoughts about this book that what I did was I ended up just like tagging all the pages that I had thoughts about, and I'm just gonna go through them and tell you what my thoughts were at that stage of the book. And then I'll just kind of wrap it up at the end, do sort of an overall how I feel about the book as a whole. So let's get started. Okay, so the first page that I have dog-eared, if you want to follow along, if you have this book, is page 24. So, minor spoiler alert, there's this guy named Josh who is the ex-boyfriend of the protagonist's sister. So her sister was dating this guy and they've been friends with him for years. She very clearly has a crush on him. I feel like the author could have maybe like pushed that point home a little bit further, but there definitely was enough going on to where I could tell that she liked this guy. And there's this line where her sister asks her if she has ever been in love before, and she says, you know, there's a lot more before this. It's like, you know, in her narrative she's thinking all of this stuff about Josh, is the guy's name, and she says, to answer her question, yes, I think I have been in real love, just once though, with Josh, our Josh. And that line just like, because I was already feeling this way about the book with the showing versus telling thing, it made me laugh because it just seems like so over the top, or so, I guess, just unnecessary. Like at this point, I 100% already know that she has a crush on Josh. So I feel like it would have been a more impactful line to just say, yes, I have been in love before, just once though. And then the whole with Josh part, we know that that's the implied ending to that sentence. We know that she's in love with Josh. It's very clear. So I don't know, I just don't like that very much. I don't like when authors try to tell you things. It's like they don't trust their readers to figure something out on their own. And in a sense, it's kind of like they don't trust their own writing. Because if you're not trusting your reader to figure out that this person's in love with this other person, then you're kind of saying that you haven't written it well enough, in my opinion. If you aren't sure if they will have gotten by now that these two characters are in love, or that this character's in love with this other character. I just feel like you should know that we would know that by now. That might sound super picky. I'm sure all of this is gonna sound super picky, but it's just like all the little things compiled as a whole just made me like frustrated with this book. Okay, so in the very next page, she is talking, this is the start of a new chapter. She's talking about how Margot, her sister, and Josh first got together. And she starts this scene where she's talking about doing homework with Josh, and then Josh says, I need your advice on something. I like someone. All right, so that's setting the scene. That's what he says. And for a while, for several paragraphs, she's talking about like, for a split second, she thought maybe he was gonna say he liked her, and then she realized that was silly, and then so she's trying to think of who else he might like. And then after all those paragraphs of her trying to figure out who he might like, she starts talking about how Margot came home one day and told her, Lara Jean, is that how you say it? Lara Jean? I don't know. Her name is hard for me. I could never figure out how you were supposed to say it, but I'm gonna say Lara Jean. So her sister Margot told her that Josh asked her out, and she was like surprised by that. Okay? My question is, over here, when Josh says, I need your advice on something, I like someone, what the heck was the rest of that conversation then? Because clearly later that day, when Margot says that Josh asked her out, Lara Jean had no idea that Josh liked Margot. So what did he say then after I need your advice on something? What was the advice that he needed? I feel like that line was just there to set up the rest of what the author wanted to say, but she didn't really think about how that conversation actually went. Like, I'm trying to picture what he could have possibly asked for advice for that wouldn't have led to Lara Jean knowing in that moment that he was interested in Margot. I mean, Margot is her sister. So to me, Josh coming and saying, I need your advice, I like someone, my thought is that maybe he's about to say like, hey, I'm interested in your sister, could you maybe talk to her for me? Or do you know if maybe she likes me too? But then later that day, when Margot says that Josh asked her out, Lara Jean has no idea that Josh liked Margot. So I just, like, where did that conversation go? What happened there? And that just bugged me. Also, another thing I will note is that I felt like this story had really, really slow build up. Because, I mean, we know that one of the big plot points of the story is that Lara Jean writes these love letters to boys that she loved, and she writes them when she's ready to stop being in love and she wants to move on. And so she writes down all her feelings and then she puts it in a box and she addresses it, but she doesn't send it, she just puts it in there. It's just for herself. And basically the big plot of the story is that those letters end up getting sent out to all the boys, and now all those boys know that she was in love with him, and that's what happens. Now there's a subplot in which her older sister Margot is going off to college, and we are on chapter 7 right here, and they are just driving Margot to the airport. So nothing has even hardly been mentioned about the letters, and certainly the letters haven't gone out yet. They are like just driving Margot to the airport, and to me, given that it was like a slow build and I didn't feel connected to the characters, it just felt like forever to get to this point. I feel like it could have gotten there in like 2 or 3 chapters instead of 7. And I'm not someone who like doesn't like long books. I love long books. I think the problem is that I just didn't feel connected to the characters really at all. I don't feel like these characters have a lot of depth, and part of it is because I didn't feel like the dialogue and the way the characters relate to each other was very believable. It felt like I could tell that someone wrote this and that it didn't actually happen. And so it just made it hard. I even after reading the whole book and actually kind of enjoying it by the end, I still don't really feel like I can pinpoint anything special about Lara Jean as the protagonist. Like, as a person, who is she and what's special about her? I can't really think of anything, really. And that made it really hard for me to enjoy reading. Also, another little petty thing that irks me is that she uses exclamation points way too much. Like, I don't think I've ever seen an author use exclamation points that much. It's just like a little overpowering, because to me, those are like, that means someone is like really seriously yelling or exclaiming, and she uses them when people are like just moderately excited or something, and it's just too much to me. So, slight spoiler alert, actually I guess kind of a big spoiler alert, but chapter 20 is when Josh confronts Lara Jean about his letter, the letter that she sent to him, and that she likes him, and that's, I feel like, a pretty long amount of time before getting to that point, because that's like kind of what's interesting about the story. And again, if the rest of it before that was like some really interesting character development that was really well written, then it might have been enjoyable. But to me, it was so like, I didn't feel connected to the characters, and I felt like the dialogue wasn't believable, and like it just didn't feel like anything was being accomplished. It was just like boring, meaningless conversation one after another that I'm like, okay, like, can we get to the thing now? And that's not how you want to feel. Like, you want to feel like excited even to read the slightly mundane things, because they tell you something about the character, or they're like, they further the plot in some way or solidify character development in some way, and I just don't think that was very well done. I hate to keep saying the same things over and over, so I don't want to be petty, but I want to be constructive in my criticism, but a lot of these are kind of the same problem over and over. So this is page 110. This is when I kind of started like, oh, like my ears perked up a little, like, oh, maybe this will be interesting. I didn't see this part coming. Like, I knew about the letters and stuff, but now I'm kind of like, okay, like this might be interesting, because the whole letter debacle was very anticlimactic. I don't know if anybody else felt that way, but I definitely, it was like, oh, okay, that happened and now it's over, and I was like, what is the rest of this book gonna be? Because that seemed like that was like the whole controversy, and it's not really that big of a deal. Like, it's not, it does kind of, I guess it is sort of the inciting incident, because it is kind of what propels the protagonist onto a new path, but it's really not like the heart of the story, in my opinion. And I actually liked the heart of the story more than I expected after that part was kind of over. So this is just maybe a little petty again, but I feel like there were so many moments that I felt this way, and this was like one that I could actually like show you that just an example of like the dialogue being really weird and like not making sense. So Lara Jean is sort of fake dating this guy named Peter, and she is telling her sister Kitty that Peter's not giving them a ride tomorrow, Josh is. And Kitty says, but won't Peter be mad? And Lara Jean says, nah, he's not the jealous type. And then Kitty says, then who's the jealous type? I don't know, maybe Josh is the jealous type. Maybe that's what we're supposed to be thinking right now, that Peter's not very jealous, but Josh is being jealous. And that was unexpected, because we thought Josh was like the good boy, but really he's the jealous type. Okay, that's all well and good, but who in the heck would say that in response to that statement? That just makes no sense. This conversation, Peter's not giving me a ride tomorrow, Josh is, but won't Peter be mad? Nah, he's not the jealous type. Then who's the jealous type? Like, what? Who would ask that? It just doesn't make any sense. Like, if you actually picture that conversation happening out loud with two people, it's like, why would anyone say that? There's no reason for Kitty to ask that question other than that the author wanted us to be thinking about that. So she made a character say it. But it doesn't make any sense for a character to say that. And I feel like there are so many examples of that in this book, of things that characters say that just, like, people don't say that ever. And it just really irks me. I feel like I've been saying that a lot. A lot of things about this book irk me. So another sort of more substantially problematic thing that I don't like about this book is her relationship with Peter is kind of unhealthy. Peter is basically billed as like the bad boy, the sort of like arrogant, like everyone loves him, but not Lara Jean because she's too good for that. But then they end up fake dating for a while, and then she kind of sees that there's more to him than meets the eye. Only the problem is, I don't really know what that more is. Basically, the only thing Peter does that seems like good is that he's really sweet with her little sister. Like, her little sister really likes him, and he's very like patient with her and plays with her and stuff. And like, of course it's always cute when guys are good with kids, but it's like, that is not enough to like outweigh all of the negative things that you've made us aware of Peter's character, you know? So I feel like it was really kind of hard to get on board with her starting to like Peter. And if you've seen my video on my top 5 favorite romance tropes, you know that I freaking love fake romance turned real. I was so excited about that for this book. I think it's honestly the only thing about this book that I was like, oh yay, this might actually be really cool. But the author kind of set Peter up as being like not the right guy so much, and then she didn't really do enough to justify all of that. And like, I get how some people who are more like reserved or, you know, always want to do the right thing, that's definitely how I was growing up. I was probably a lot like Lara Jean in that. I get that sometimes it's good for them to be with someone who is a little more lax and can help them to let go and, you know, find adventures and not have to like plan their whole life away. So that's like cute for them to be together in that way because Peter is that way. But there are so many times when Peter just like completely disrespects Lara Jean's wishes in order to make her do something that maybe she wouldn't have done on her own, but that she didn't really want to do. And yeah, she ended up having a good time, but it's like, where do you draw the line between trying to get someone to break out of their shell and like forcing someone to do something that they said they didn't want to do and, you know, disrespecting what they want? There's a really good example here. They were about to go on a ski trip, and she's basically saying that she doesn't want to go on the trip anymore. And basically he just says, no, you're going. And she goes. The last sentence of this chapter is, why is it so hard to say no to him? Is this what it's like to be in love with somebody? No, it's not what it's like to be in love with somebody. People who love you don't just completely ignore your wishes and say, no, you're doing this anyway. Like, I am all for people who want to like make someone break out of their shell, but maybe ask first, like, well, why don't you want to go? You know, at least listen to the other person. Don't just completely ignore what they want and be like, nah, you're coming because it'll be fun and you'll have fun. It's like, that's just rude. And it kind of annoys me that that is portrayed as, I mean, by this line, it's almost portrayed as being the sign that you're in love with somebody, which is really messed up. But even lesser than that, it's definitely not portrayed as a bad thing ever, that Peter does that so much. It's actually, I think, supposed to be one of his good traits that we're supposed to like because it balances out Lara Jean's like need to always plan everything in her life and he's more of a free spirit. But it just doesn't come across in like a healthy way where like people balance each other well because they challenge each other. Like that's healthy. But this is more just like him being an arrogant ass and not listening to her. And I don't know. I didn't find it very charming. And then last but not least, I did not enjoy the ending of this book. I did actually end up liking, I say liking, I mean, I enjoyed it. I didn't like hate it. For a long time, it actually was a chore to read. Like I was sitting down like, okay, I want to finish this book. I gotta read some of it. But by the end, it wasn't a chore anymore. But I definitely did not like the very end of the book. It just felt very anticlimactic. Okay, this is gonna be a super huge spoiler, so if you don't want to know the very end of this book, then you should skip ahead to this timestamp. So now that you've been warned, the very end of the book, basically it ends with Lara Jean deciding, so Peter and Lara Jean have kind of been in a fight and they're not really like talking, and she finally kind of realizes how much she likes him and she decides that she wants to be with him. And then that's just like the end. Basically, she sits down to write a love letter, but instead of writing it like a goodbye, she's just writing an actual love letter to Peter to say, I'm in love with you, I guess. The book ends with the words, can you see that? Dear Peter. It's like, Dear Peter, ... And then it leaves the rest up to your imagination, which I think is really cute, and I think that would have been a really cute ending if there was an epilogue. Because the problem I have with this ending is that they're kind of in a fight right now, and basically it ended with Lara Jean deciding, I want to be with him, but then we didn't get to see her like actually go be with him or go tell him that, and we didn't get to see his reaction or whether or not they worked out their differences and like he wants to be with her too. Like we just didn't get to see any of that, and that was just really weird to me. It seemed like a strange spot to end. I feel like it was done because of the style, because of leaving it, because of the letters, tying that back in, which again I think would have been really cute if there was another chapter after that. Another thing that I kind of forgot to mention, really important moment in sort of the middle-ish of the book, or I guess kind of like the beginning of the third act. This is also kind of a spoiler, so I'll keep this in the spoilers only section. But basically there is a point in the story in which Josh finally confesses to Lara Jean that he has feelings for her too, and he wants to be with her, and she says that she realizes in that moment that she doesn't like Josh anymore and that she likes Peter. And the thing is, that's like it. That's like all that's said, is I realized I didn't like Josh and I like Peter. And there's no more to it than that. And to me, that just makes me feel like this character is very shallow and that she just doesn't like Josh anymore because now she likes Peter instead, which is really immature and stupid. I really wish the author would have gone a little deeper there, like said, I don't know, maybe she could say, I realized that I was never in love with Josh and I was only in love with the idea of him, or maybe she could say that I've always liked Josh because we're very similar, but being with Peter has shown me that maybe it's good to be with someone who balances out your differences and challenges you more, or something. Like, should have been something more said than just, I realized just now that I don't like Josh anymore. It's like, okay, but why? So yeah, that was really bothersome to me because that was such a big moment in the story, and it was like there's no reason for her to not like Josh anymore, like at all, other than that she's with Peter now and she likes him instead. But I don't know, it was just really weird. So basically those are all of my thoughts about the book. I would say at the beginning of reading it, I was honestly prepared to give it like 1 star because I just so did not like it. I think there are a lot of ongoing problems, very big lack of character development, a lot of telling and not a lot of showing. the relationship was kind of just not quite healthy enough to be on board with. And so the main character seemed very immature at times and shallow, which, I mean, she is a junior in high school, but there are plenty of young adult novels. Like, I mean, I also recently just read Amy and Roger's Epic Detour by Morgan Matson, and that was a young adult novel with so much depth. And, like, it doesn't have to be a shallow story just because you're writing about teenagers. Like, teenagers aren't all shallow people. They have depth to them too. And the dialogue definitely bothered me a lot. There were a lot of things that I felt like people would just never actually say, and it was just weird. And just, I think, a lot of missed opportunity for more depth to the story. Honestly, I think everything was very surface level. Reading it, and it was no longer a chore to read. Like it was at the beginning, but I'd still only give it maybe like 2 or 3 stars, and I just don't understand. Like, I'm curious to watch some people's reviews on this book, because I know it's been recommended by a lot of booktubers, and I don't understand why. Like, I really don't. I don't understand why nobody else has had the same problems I did with this. It's one of those things that's like, I have a apparently really controversial opinion on this, and I don't get why it's controversial. Kind of reminds me of how I feel about 13 Reasons Why, because I love 13 Reasons Why, and so many people hate it, and so it's just like super confusing to me, because everything I hear about it, I'm like, but that's what makes it great, you know? And I feel like the opposite with this book. Like, everything I hear about this book, I'm like, what? Like, that's not good. I don't know. I just feel like I'm taking crazy pills.
I feel like I'm taking crazy pills!
So, yeah, if any of you have thoughts on this book, if you've read it before, if you liked it, or if you hated it, please let me know in the comments below what you thought. If you have any thoughts on what I've said about it, whether you agree with me or disagree with me, I would love to have a conversation about it. So yeah, let me know what you think in the comments below. If you like this video, hit the thumbs up, and if you want to see more videos from me in the future, subscribe below. My debut novel, Keep No Record, is available on Amazon, and I will link that in the description box as well. And that's it. I'll see y'all next time, and have a great day. Bye!